Welcome to our first Leadership on accreditation. I thought maybe I would introduce myself first, and Shannon, but I do want to introduce myself in one way. You all know my official title is Provost, or Chief Academic and Student Affairs Officer. And I've had this assignment since, I had to look at my notes to remember, since January of 2007, after Dr. Ron Keith retired. But I have had another assignment since January of 2003, even longer than that. And that is that I've been the accreditation liaison with the Higher Learning Commission. And the Higher Learning Commission is our accrediting agency. And with this assignment, I led EAC's quest for reaffirmation of accreditation in 2007. I led the work in getting our systems portfolio in place and all of that. I led the college through action projects. Anyway, it was a huge responsibility, almost overwhelming with my other job. So excuse me, and we had another systems portfolio due in January of 2011. I just felt overwhelmed. So in November, so in January of 2011, we got approval from the district office for a new position. And that new position was a coordinator of institutional accreditation and improvement. And that is Shannon Seballos. Let me tell you my opinion. I have to write this down so I don't forget it. Hiring Shannon is one of the best things the college has done. And I could go on and on about how invaluable she is, but that would take too much time. So let's just get on with the leadership. Let's go to the next slide. I hope you can read this. At the Higher Learning Commission annual conference last year, Shannon, Seballos, and I, along with others that went with us, got this strong impression that we needed to do something to help everyone at EAC understand accreditation better. So, especially with the accreditation visit coming up a year from now, just a little over a year from now, so that if evaluators who are on campus ask you any questions, you will feel very comfortable and informed about answering any questions they might have. So that's the purpose of this leadership, and we'll have one more leadership that goes into a little bit more detail. So we're going to give you a lot of information today. We won't expect you to remember it all, because luckily most of this information is either on our website or on the Hive in Knowledge Base or on the R drive if you have access to the R drive. So, but chances of everybody reading all that information in all those different places is probably not going to happen. You know, it's probably slim. So we thought having this leadership would help all of you a lot. Say in 1 hour you can get the meat of a lot of the things that you need to know. Okay? So here's the agenda. This is a quote, I guess, go back, that Shannon got at one of the workshops or sessions that she attended. Thought it was really good, and it was kind of the inspiration for this leadership. Okay, and this is our agenda for today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of accreditation at EAC, and then Shannon will explain where we are today on the as far as the history is concerned, and then we're going to go over the higher learning criteria for accreditation. It's huge. We're not going to go over everything, but we're going to let you know exactly what it is, where it is, what it means, and then we are going to have an activity. We want you to be able to connect the dots between accreditation and what you do here at EAC. So that's one of the main things, and then we'll have just a little bit of a reflection. So, EAC Accreditation History. Some of this is actually in a video that EAC has put together. How many of you have seen that video? Probably a lot of you. Well, just a handful. Todd put that video together. He's very familiar with it and has shown it many, many times when we have visitors on campus. We're very proud of that video, and it is on our website, so if you want to go look at it, you could. But according to our history, EAC was first accredited by the North Central Association. It wasn't the Higher Learning Commission at that time, but by the North Central Association in 1917. But according to the Higher Learning Commission's, our first accreditation was in 1963. That's a big gap. But I'm not sure what all happened between that period. But that was, according to the Higher Learning Commission, on our official status page, that was when we were first accredited, was in 1963. And then EAC received its first 10-year accreditation in 1986 and again in 1996. Now, we were very proud of that. It was the first time EAC had gotten a 10-year accreditation. That meant we didn't have to go through the whole accreditation process for another 10 years, which was a beautiful thing. But I wasn't even involved, so I didn't know. At that time, there was only one model for accreditation, and that was where they did a huge self-study, and then people came on campus for 2 or 3 days or longer and looked at everything that we had done, and didn't even look at really what our plans were and how we had planned to improve, but just looked at what we had done, and that was it. In 2000, around 2000, I'm not sure the date, the Higher Learning Commission adopted another model for accreditation, and that was called AQUIP. And President Bryce came on board in 2002. The AQUIP model, which was more of a continuous improvement model, was more in line with his leadership style and his vision of the college and where we should be going as far as accreditation is concerned. And so we chose to apply to be accepted as an AQUIP institution, and we were. We were an AQUIP institution for 9 years, and then in 2010, around that time, the Higher Learning Commission established another model, which was called the Open Pathway. And we looked at it. Shannon and I both did an analysis as to the pros and cons of changing, and we thought it would fit our current status and our culture if we changed to an open pathway. Now, the only way we could have changed to an open pathway is if we had been an AQUIP institution for a number of years and we had received a reaffirmation of accreditation during that time that we were an AQUIP institution. So we were eligible to switch. We are happy with the open pathway model. We feel like it was a good thing. We are on our way to being a kind of like a self-governing when it comes to how we are going to improve, what we want to improve on. That's what we like. Okay, are there any questions on that so far? Okay, I'm going to turn some slides over to Shannon.
We transitioned over to the open pathway model in 2012. As there are some similarities and some differences between the AQUIP model and the open pathway model. The main similarity is that they both embrace continuous process improvement. So that focus with our accreditation did not change. Some of the major differences between the two models, the first is the length of the timeline. The AQUIP model was a 7-year model, so we had to receive reaffirmation of accreditation every 7 years under AQUIP. Under the open pathway model, it is a 10-year cycle, so we are up for reaffirmation of accreditation every 10 years. Now, as we transitioned in 2012 over to the open pathway model, they had to fit us right into the cycle at a point which we would still be up for our reaffirmation of accreditation at the same scheduled time, which is 2016, 2017. So when we entered into the model, we entered into year 6. So as you can see, we entered in right in the middle of the timeline. And that's something that's important to know as we go through this. Before I go into what we're working on and what we have been working on, I want to just take you through this timeline so you have a feel of what's to come, because we are getting ready to start back at year 1 of the open pathway timeline. So under year 1, institutions generally start working on their assurance argument. And this assurance argument is a large document where institutions provide narrative and evidence that they meet all of the criteria for accreditation. They have roughly 4 years to work on this assurance argument, and at year 4 they have an assurance review, which is where the Higher Learning Commission has a team of peer reviewers that review the document in entirety to make sure that the institution is in compliance with the criteria for accreditation. After that point, the institution then is allowed to start working on their quality initiative. And this is one of the other main differences between the AQUIP pathway and the open pathway. Under AQUIP, institutions were required to do at least 3 action projects every year. So they had to have 3 projects going at any given time. Under open pathway, there is 1 major improvement project within that 10-year cycle. So at year 5, institutions are then asked to come up with a project that they want to work on. The project is meant to be large in scope. It's supposed to be a stretch project, if you will, and it needs to be approved by the Higher Learning Commission. So they check it to make sure that it's really going to challenge your institution. Once the institution receives approval to work on the quality initiative, they then have roughly 4 years to get the project to a completion point. At that point, they then file a report with the Higher Learning Commission, and it details the accomplishments and the challenges within the project. And again, a team of peer reviewers look at the project and determine whether or not substantial effort was made towards that project. They do not look at whether or not the project was successful. They don't necessarily care if it was success or failure. They want to see that institutions are driving large improvements at their institution. So, EAC, as we transitioned into this, we were a year behind, if you will. We had to immediately come up with a quality initiative. And it just so happened that EAC was at a point where we were transitioning over to the open pathway model. And we felt that there was so much that we learned under AQUIP that we wanted to preserve as we were moving into this new model. And some of those were action projects, some of the processes that we had in place to measure and assess our processes here at EAC and to drive improvement. And all of that was no longer a requirement. So we wanted to make sure that it was preserved and it was going to remain a priority here at EAC. So what we did is we just developed this project to develop a self-governing quality culture. So rather than having the Higher Learning Commission oversee and approve continuous improvement projects that we were going to be working on, we felt that we would use employee feedback and stakeholder feedback to assess what improvements we needed to be working on, and then we would have an oversight body, which is a cross-functional team, to oversee all of the continuous improvement here at EAC. That is essentially the main point of EAC's quality initiative. There's some other pieces that go into that, which includes the development of our leaderships. So that's another piece of why we are here today. We are finalizing our quality initiative. We have one last piece to complete that's going to be done within the next couple of months, and we will submit our quality initiative in August of this year. That then leads us right into the assurance review and the comprehensive evaluation. So with that, you can assume that we also had to start working on developing our assurance argument right away. Most other institutions had had 6 years to develop theirs, where we had only a few. So we developed a team. It's in the assurance argument team, and we have at least 2 individuals working on each of the 5 main topics of the criteria for accreditation. This assurance team has worked hard over the last couple of years. We have a very strong draft that we have developed, and it's currently sitting with our technical writer, who's Pete Chittister. And then over the next year, we're going to have a team that goes back out to the Higher Learning Commission to make sure that we have everything in place. And we will be working on gathering all of the evidence to make sure that the Higher Learning Commission is convinced that we meet all of the criteria for accreditation. A couple other things that go into this year 10 is a site visit, where a team of peer reviewers will be here on site. They will be asking questions of students, faculty, staff, administration, possibly the community, just to make sure that everything that we had put into our assurance document is in fact true. It will also include a survey to students. So students will be able to answer any questions that the Higher Learning Commission asks of them. And it will also include an opportunity to comment from the communities that we serve. So this accreditation covers all of EAC. It covers Gila, it covers Greenlee County, it covers everything for EAC. One thing to note though is that we already had one box checked off because the Higher Learning Commission came out last year to do a review of our additional locations. We have so many additional locations that they felt that they could come out and do a review of our accreditation for those additional locations just to save some time when they come out this next year. And we passed with flying colors. There were no issues whatsoever. The peer reviewer was very impressed with EAC. So we feel that the same will happen in February of next year. So that then leads us into why we are here today. We just want to make sure that all of the employees are comfortable with answering any questions that the peer reviewers may have. And also, we've had some significant changes here at EAC in response to some accreditation changes. So we want to make sure everyone's up to speed on our accreditation. They know what's going on because this next year is a very important year for EAC. So now we're going to go through each of the 5 criteria for oh, actually, I got ahead of myself, I'm sorry. So before we go into each of the 5 criteria for accreditation, I wanted to review what the criteria for accreditation even is. I'm sure many of you have heard this multiple times and it's probably assumed what it is, but I just want to kind of go through that just to make sure. It is a set of rules that all institutions must abide by. So regardless of whether the institution is an open pathway, AQUIP, standard pathway, regardless of their model, they must abide by every single one of the criteria for accreditation. The compliance is generally checked during reaffirmation of accreditation. However, there are several trigger points within the timeline. So you can see the assurance argument is a trigger point. If the peer reviewers see that there may be an issue at the site, then the Higher Learning Commission can come out and do a review at any time. We also submit data to the Higher Learning Commission every year. So there's different points at which the Higher Learning Commission can check the criteria for accreditation, but the main one is during that reaffirmation of accreditation. It includes 5 major criterion, which is 5 major topics. It includes 21 core components under those and 68 subcomponents under those. So that's a total of 89 areas of compliance that institutions have to be in compliant with. It's very black and white. It's you meet, you don't meet, or you meet with concerns. You don't meet or you meet with concerns automatically trigger monitoring or sanctions by the Higher Learning Commission. So it's absolutely imperative that we are in compliance with each of these areas. One thing to note as we go through this is that there were significant revisions in 2012. The federal government started to put pressure on the Higher Learning Commission, and in response, the Higher Learning Commission revamped their criteria for accreditation. And there's a much larger focus on things like transparency, integrity, continuous improvement. Thankfully, as EAC was under the AQUIP model, we already had a lot of these things in place. However, we did need to make some improvements, and we're going to go through each of those as we touch on each of the 5 criteria for accreditation. Okay, so criterion 1 focuses on mission and vision. It states that the institution's mission is clear and articulated publicly, and it guides the institution's operations. So the Higher Learning Commission isn't just asking institutions to have a mission statement. They want to see that it guides the institution's operations, that employees and students understand the mission of the institution, And they also want to see that the public can easily access information on our mission statement. So I'm not going to go through each of these for the sake of time, but we will pass out this, which goes through the criteria for accreditation in detail, just in case you want to read through it at a later point. But I will go through some of the projects that we have worked on, just to make sure that we are ready for our visit. The first is that we developed a policy on our mission statement review cycle. The Higher Learning Commission asked that the mission statement is reviewed on a regular basis. So in response, we developed a policy this last year that states that the mission statement will be reviewed on a 10-year cycle. The last time it was reviewed was 2009, so it will be up for review again in 2019. We also developed a strategic plan. Many of you probably remember the strategic plan as it was an action project that was led by Provost Bryce and Dr. Skinner. And they came out and they talked with employees, they talked with stakeholders, and with help from the district office, they came up with this strategic plan. So for the first time, as far as I'm aware of, EAC now has a strategic plan that is meant to guide the major planning for the institution for that 5-year period. We also did some major rework to our program portfolio process. For those of you who are not familiar with the program portfolio, it is EAC's main document to assess the effectiveness of our academic and academic support programs and to also drive continuous improvement. And by academic support programs, I mean every area that touches students, every other area that is not an academic program. So it includes our counseling office, our marketing office, our SBDC. It includes every other department within the institution. With this revision, it was actually an action project that was led by Dean Crockett, and they redid the templates for the academic and academic support program portfolios to make sure that the questions that were being asked were appropriate and were actually meant to drive improvement. It also included the development of an online system that made the process of developing and submitting the portfolios much easier. And finally, it developed this appraisal system where the deans, the provost, and the chief business officer could then go in and provide the programs with timely feedback so they could then drive improvement at their institution, at their program level. The final piece was that we needed to link the process of budgeting, program portfolio, and mission. We have always had a strong connection between our program portfolios and our mission statement, as there's one question in there that asks for a relationship between the program's mission and the institution's mission. But we were lacking in the connection between the budget and the program portfolio, and I'm sure some of you can probably speak to that, where there was frustration in the past where programs had to make some sort of a request for additional faculty or facility improvements in the program portfolio, but then they also needed to do it in the budget. And if they did it in one place and not the other, there were some issues. And also, if they did it in the budget, there really wasn't some hard evidence to show why that request was necessary. So this last year, we developed a process where the program portfolios now must accompany any major budget increase request. And that then shows that there is a connection between the two, and it is meant to really streamline the process of requesting additional faculty or facility improvements. Now, before we go on, I just wanted to kind of get a feel for how many of you in this room know what EAC's mission statement is. Can you raise your hand? If you don't, let's see if it'll come up. Okay, so it's out here on the website. If you go to, so about EAC, get to know us, mission statement. There you go. So it's out here, and the mission of the institution is to provide quality higher education and to be accountable to stakeholders for educational results, fiscal responsibility, and cultural development. So the Higher Learning Commission is going to want to see that this mission of being accountable to our stakeholders, to be fiscally responsible, and to aid in cultural development is in fact happening. throughout the institution. So that's one thing to keep in mind over the next year. Also here at the bottom, you will see a link to our strategic plan. So if you have not yet seen the strategic plan, you can go out to the website and you can see what it is, read through it. And also on your way out, we have some copies, some hard copies. So if you don't have one at your desk and you want to have one, we have some here that you can grab on your way out. And we just wanted to get to recognize those that worked on the assurance team for each of the criterion. So you'll see it here at the bottom. We had Gary Sorensen and Todd Haney working on this particular criterion. Okay, criterion 2 focuses on integrity. And this is just one of those areas that's sort of a given at most institutions. You don't necessarily think that you need to have this strong focus on reminding employees of integrity and that sort of thing. But it was so important to the Higher Learning Commission and the federal government that they made it its own criterion. And they expanded it and created some new regulation, if you will, for integrity. EAC has been compliant in this area for a very long time, but I just wanted to talk about some of which goes into this because it's very broad. It talks about integrity within the institution's financial functions, personnel, auxiliary functions. It talks about policies with personnel and within the institution that help to aid in ethical decision making. It talks about the governing boards being sufficiently autonomous to make decisions for the institution. It also talks about freedom of expression here at EAC and academic integrity policies. And within that, within some of these subcomponents that you can't see but you will be able to read later, you will see that there is a specific mention made to having an ethics policy for employees and doing regular ethics training. And this is something that EAC has not done. We didn't feel that we had the need to do that, but it is now a need for EAC. So in the last 2 years, I believe, Lori Avila had an action project with a team of others and created this ethics statement and pledge, the pledge you may remember signing as you did your contract, and some training. And this training, we tried to customize it to EAC so it would be, entertaining. But this was the reason that we did that. It was a very black and white requirement of the Higher Learning Commission. So we now have that in place, just another box to check off, and we're good. So the assurance team for this one was Lori Avila and Tammy Gillespie, and they worked really hard on providing the evidence for this. And now I'm going to pass it over to Jeanne.
Logical that I would do criterion 3, which is on teaching and learning or quality resources and support, has to do with our programs, our courses and our programs. Make sure that they're get my right notes. To make sure that they're at the level that they should be for a higher learning institution. They're not high school level courses. They're at the right level for what we say we are. We're a community college. So we do have a planning and steering committee and that oversees that. We have a dean of instruction who is also a dean of curriculum instruction that helps us, and you know who that is, Jeanne Slawhorn. She has a huge assignment when it comes to that, but we feel like we meet this criteria very well. Let's see if I can find where I want to be. In each one of our programs and courses, we need to show that we have specific goals, and that's why we have our course designs that require you to put competencies and goals, and it's something that every institution needs to do, but it's right there in one of the criteria that an institution must have that, and we do well with all of that. Another part of this is that we have general education, a good general education program, a general education program that is grounded in philosophy, and we do. That's like Shannon said, we mainly don't want to focus on the criteria, because you're going to get a handout that has all of the criteria, the subcomponents, and what it means. We want to focus on what we've done to make sure that we do meet or continue to meet the criteria. And so one of the things we've done just recently is updated our general education policy. We have a general education policy. I don't know if that really wasn't an action project, it's just something that the deans did. Felt like that policy needed to be updated. And we are in the process of actually reviewing all of our general education courses. A project that we're doing right now as far as general education is concerned is that we are developing a very sound program for assessing general education for our graduates. I talked about that at the spring orientation. Most of the staff didn't hear that, but we are going to be giving the general outcomes assessment for all of our graduates in March. It's something we haven't done for about 4 years, but this is going to be perfect. We have done so much planning on this. We have an anticipated 350, 400 students that should take the test, and we're going to get an 80% rate for this test. We don't want any more 20%, 30%. We actually want 100%, but we know we may not get there. We're going to get a high results for our assessment here. Some of the other things, let me go over some of the criteria first. Part of this is that our instructors are qualified, appropriately qualified, when it talks about quality resources and support. Our faculty need to be appropriately qualified. Our instructors should be evaluated. It's part of the criteria. That's why we have an evaluation process. We'd like to, it's just comes around every March and April, and you say, oh no, here we have to evaluate all of our faculty and staff again. But it's required. I mean, the Higher Learning Commission is going to look to see what we do for evaluation of our employees. We also will be required, or they'll look at our support services for all of our academic programs. Do we have adequate counselors and our fiscal office, our financial aid, records, all of those things? That's part of the support services. They'll also be looking at our support for student learners, like our Center for Teaching and Learning. We have so much in place that I think that the peer reviewers will be impressed with what we have. Another part of this one criteria is our infrastructure, our technological infrastructure and our facilities and everything. They'll be looking at our buildings and our classrooms and our labs and our library, make sure we have the resources that are expected of a higher learning institution. So all of those things are really important. And then another area that they'll be looking at is our co-curricular activities or programs that we have. And so you can see all of you can see, I can see right here. You can see right there. All of the projects, current and recent projects that we've done. We had a first-time student experience action project that Eric Lehman led. He had a really good team. They did so much. I think most of you are aware of the revision of the revamping of Gila Hank. That was all part of that process. The summer bridge program, Monster Bridge that we have, is all part of that orientation the students have at the beginning. They did a lot of work, and I firmly believe that it had a great impact on the retention of our students and the completion rate of our students. Even though we had fewer students last year and the year before, we had a larger number of graduates. Our graduating class was larger. So it's got to have an impact. I think that was a great action project. The deans and I are right in the middle of the activity of updating faculty credentials, our faculty credentialing policy, because the Higher Learning Commission has just come down with some new guidelines, qualifications, a little bit stricter. we're going to, you'll see that policy come to planning and steering and then circulated through the whole campus. There'll be an update in that policy. So that's something we're working on. We have an advising action project in process right now. They're looking at our advising processes to see if there's anything that needs to be improved. That's being led by Mike Fox. We have a textbook action project that is near completion. Rather than the policy being a textbook adoption policy, it's a resource, educational resources policy, because so many programs don't use textbooks anymore. They do other educational resources. So we've updated that policy. Glenn Snyder is working on a student success tracking action project to see if we track student success and completion rates and withdrawal rates and all those things. And then we have one of our newest action projects is the Student Learning Environment Action Project. Most of you probably don't even know that's going on. It's very new in its development, but we have asked Doug Griffin and Kenny Rhodes to lead this action project, and they're looking at the whole campus, mainly the outside environment, to see where we can improve student learning, improve the learning environment. Better places for students to mingle and study and collaborate. So the only thing is that action project is going to cost money, and so part of the action project is even looking at resources that we could get additional funds to help with that project. So it's coming along. So we're doing a lot of things as far as Criterion 3 is concerned. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to go on with, no, you're doing Criterion 4. Okay, let me go over here.
Okay, Criterion 4 piggybacks on Criterion 3 in that it focuses on academic and academic support programs. But this focus is on the assessment of the effectiveness of the programs and also on the continuous improvement of these programs. It states that the institution demonstrates responsibility for the quality of its educational programs, learning environments, and support services, and it evaluates their effectiveness for student learning through processes designed to promote continuous improvement. As you read that, you may think, wow, that's our program portfolio process, which for the most part it really is. And that leads to the importance of the revision of our program portfolios. And it strengthens our evidence in this particular area. Some other areas that it's talking to is the assessment of student learning and making sure that the practices that we have in place are sufficient and up to date. And it also talks about retention, persistence, and completion rates, and paying attention to those things and implementing change if need arises. So that's the kind of the main theme of the Criterion 4. Now, some of the projects that we have worked on, I'm not going to go into the program portfolio process again, but this shows the importance of this particular project. Provost Bryce talked to the revised faculty credentialing policy that also touches on this area. She also mentioned the Student Success Tracking Project, and this is led by Glenn Snyder, and it's meant to develop a portal or a system that tracks student success. So it tracks transfers, it tracks employment, it tracks all of the different areas that we need for student success to be able to measure how well we are doing. I'm not sure exactly what this portal is going to look like, but I think it's going to also be a way where employees can then go and input information that they may have on students. Another area is some assessment workshops, and we had set up several meetings over the summer with Greg Watson, our CTL director, to talk about assessment and how we are supporting faculty in ensuring that their processes are relevant and effective. So over the next couple of years, we will probably have some workshops that will most likely take place during division meeting times or at administration faculty meeting, where we will do some sort of a focus on assessment. This is a very important topic for the Higher Learning Commission and the federal government. They have a lot of focus improvement areas in the Higher Learning Commission where institutions can go in and work on their assessment strategy. So we want to make sure that we are also dedicating resources to that area. So it's not necessarily that we are lacking in that area, it's just that we need to make sure that we're also, it's also a priority in terms of improvement. The final piece is co-curricular assessment, and this is a new area for accreditation, where the Higher Learning Commission is now saying that we need to assess the learning that is taking place in our ASEAC clubs. In the past, it was sort of one of those things that was sort of a thumbs up. We were doing more than what we needed to. But now the Higher Learning Commission is saying, okay, well, what are students learning in those areas? And we had to develop an action project, which was led by Gary Sorensen, to develop this process. It's taken a little bit more time than we had thought, but it makes sense because we need to give these faculty members the time and the resources to develop these learning plans, and we also need to kind of get their buy-in because it's so new, and for some people it doesn't necessarily make complete sense. But again, it's one of those new requirements of the Higher Learning Commission, and it's something that we have to adhere to. So I believe the next one is you.
The assurance team for this one was, for the last one, was Mike Crockett and Glenn Snyder. And the one before that I did was Janice and Greg and Sharon Allen. Yes, that was a huge one. Okay, the last criterion for accreditation is on resources planning and institutional effectiveness. And what it involves is making sure that we have policies in place. We have a policy book. We follow those policies. We have a governing board. The governing board understands the college, understands the policies, is very involved in making sure that the policies are followed. Another thing that it includes is that we have a planning process, and we've already talked about that, systematic planning, but this is part of this criteria, is that the institution engages in systematic and integrated planning. And this also is part of linking the budgeting process and the strategic planning process and the program review process. It's all involved as well. It also involves planning according to our capacity. I mean, we don't try to do more than we can possibly do. And where some institutions may, and then they find themselves in deep debt. But we have a very sound financial situation, and we want to keep it that way. In our systems portfolios that we did, that was one of our strengths, was that we do have a sound financial situation. And then also part of this criterion is that we have a process in place to document and to monitor and improve in anything that we do. And that's where our President's Quality Council, our quality initiative comes in. When Shannon was mentioning our quality initiative that we were required to do, that one huge improvement document, the main thing we developed there was that oversight body, which is called the President's Quality Council. I don't know if you mentioned that, but if you got that link, that's what the President's Quality Council is that main overriding body has a lot of different people within the college, different areas, staff, administration, faculty, overseeing all of the action projects that are being considered, proposed. We have within that, I need to leave time. I'm talking too much. You're learning too much. But we do even have a subcommittee within the President's Quality Council. It's called the CERT Committee, led by Janice, that reviews all of our surveys. All of everything that we assess, they'll review the results and see if there's anything in there that will trigger something that needs to be improved on. Is there something wrong? Are there a lot of complaints about a certain thing? And so that's been really valuable. And the part of this is that, you know, the institution learns from its experiences, from its assessments and so on. So we've already talked about most of the things here that we've done. They're all linked as part of this. This part of the assurance argument was, the team was led by me with Tim Curtis, Darwin Weech, and Heston Welker. Okay, let's go on, we gotta hurry. We want you now, I think you're doing the next part.
It doesn't matter, I was just putting the slide up.
We want you to see that to connect the dots now and see that what you do, and as you were going through this, you probably have seen that what you do relates to one of these processes, making sure that we're accredited. I'm just thinking right now about nursing and how they are working on being nationally accredited. And that has to do with criterion 3, where I said, you know, we want to make sure our programs are at the appropriate level for higher education. So there's, you know, so in this activity, I'm giving you one answer already that you can that you can put on your sticky note. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and explain it a little bit better?
So you have some sticky dots in front of you, and we asked that you write down at least 2 ways that your position relates to each of these 5 areas. If you can't do that, then that's okay. But you'll have 10 dots in front of you, so you use those sticky notes to jot down some areas that your job relates to each of them. The boards are around the room. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you can refer back to your slides. If you need copies of the actual criteria for accreditation, we'll go around and pass these out. So we'll give 10 minutes, and then we'll do a brief reflection, and you're all free to take a shirt and leave.
We hope that as you went through, as you watched and listened to us, you were thinking, oh, that's why I did that. Well, that's how I was involved with that. And so you already know what to put on those notes. Yes, Rick?
Names, areas.
It looked like a drop of blood. I was worried about you.
Oh, yeah.
You're welcome.
We don't need to know who put the dot up there. You can, if you want to put names, that's fine too.
Sorry. So the dots go up on the boards.
The dots are going to go up on the board, and other
Yes.
people are going to be able to see them.
I'll peel it off.
So whatever you want to put on that dot.
It's gonna need new dots. No, I'm not.
I have some extra dots.
It's okay, Shannon, I'm good.
And this will help you remember what the criteria is with a little bit more explanation about each one.
Yeah.
I think I gave you 2. Can you?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I'll be fine. Are you sure? Yeah, and if not, then Jeannie, I'm sure she can help me. You'll take them. When I was pouring them out, I was like,
Hi, how are you? Hi. And we are going to keep these posters so we can refer back to them. And sometimes it'll help us to even remember.
I'll try to find one. I think I have.
Remember what
Probably a dozen in my
you
purse.
feel you're doing, which is good. Sometimes we don't make the connection either. We'll put it up in the faculty lounge or the student services lounge or the dean's lounge.
So do you want who this is, like what department or what division this is?
Whatever you want to put.
Because we look pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect pink one.
Yeah. If you want to identify yourself, that's fine. Whatever you want to put there.
Remain anonymous. We'll see how we. Okay.
You're welcome.
I think as you get going, you're gonna be able to come up with way more than 2 things in each criterion.
I know, that's what I thought when I got here. I thought I should have brought some too. I'll try to look in my purse. I might have a couple.
They've got to have somewhere in this building report. Well, that today, don't worry about today, but for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll have to grab some. Yeah.